What up Mr. Burgess, we are really sorry this video is super late and we asked for like 3 extensions. We both spent a lot of time recording and editing the video, so hopefully it was worth the wait and the video isn't bad, ha 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 ha.
Once upon a time, there was Japan and the US, but Japan exploded because the US thought it would be a power move. The end. Okay, I'm joking. Partly anyways. Kowalski, roll the tape! So once upon a time, the world existed in peace, until the Fire Nation attacked.
Actually, that's not what happened. I thought it was super obvious, but...
Okay, scene 1, take 7. Once upon a time. Rolling.
So once upon a time, in 1939-ish, a group of American scientists, many of whom were refugees from the fascist regime in Europe, became concerned with nuclear weapon research being conducted in Nazi Germany. You see, the US thought that Germany was up to something really fishy, like tuna fish fishy. Like Hitler had been kinda planning this since 1930 fishy. Like creating the next chemical.
She means the atomic bomb.
So in the year 1940, they, as in the US government, decided to invest into something called the Manhattan Project. This project was the US's own atomic weapon development program, which came under the joint responsibility of the Office of Scientific Research and Development and the War Department after the US's entry into World War II.
Hey, wait a second. Wasn't the US not in the war?
Yeah, that's right. They weren't.
So then how did they get involved?
Don't you want to hear about the Manhattan Project? I mean, it was made in Manhattan. It's probably super epic. Something like skyscrapers and economic crisis.
Okay. Yeah, but if we don't know why the US got involved, then how are we supposed to understand why they even bothered in the first place? Please!
Okay, fine! I'm starting to contemplate if I should have even brought you here.
On December 7th, 1941, the Pacific War was started as a result of the devastating Japanese surprise attack on the American naval base Pearl Harbor.
But why did Japan attack the United States? Was there a reason?
Well, yes, there were actually many valid reasons. You see, the US had begun passing economic sanctions against Japan, like trade embargoes on aircraft exports, oil, scrap metal imports, and other key goods. They believed this would stop Japan's expansionism. In September 1940, Japan signed a tripartite pact with Germany and Italy, the two fascist regimes at the time, who were then at war with the Allies. Tokyo and Washington had negotiated for months leading up to the Pearl Harbor attack, but without success. As in, Japan was going to attack it anyway because, well, they felt like it. The sanctions and other penalties that the US had imposed had actually convinced Japan to stand its ground, but it stirred up the anger of its people against continued Western interference in Asian affairs. To Japan, war with the US had become inevitable, in order to defend their status as major world power. Because the odds were stacked against them, their only chance was the element of surprise.
So why attack a harbor out of all places? I mean, Kmart would have been personally better. Have you seen how people buy mass amounts of toilet paper? Just saying.
The destruction of its naval base and its vessels would severely cripple the American Pacific Fleet and its response to Japanese aggression, forcing Japan's only real threat in the Pacific to be out of action for multiple months. It would also allow for Japan's easy pickings of American and Allied-controlled territories of the Pacific. Places like British Hong Kong, Malaya, Burma, the Dutch East Indies, and the American-controlled Philippines were all seized after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now, back on track. This officially causes the United States to join the war, even though they never wanted to. Following this incident was, of course, the fall of the British Hong Kong, the American-controlled Philippines, and other Allied territories, plus the continued harassment of Australia. This led to the slow crushing of the Imperial Japanese Navy against the American naval superiority, which then also resulted in an American island-hopping campaign where American forces attacked and invaded Japanese-controlled islands, often with heavy casualties to oust the Japanese, paving the way to Japanese homeland. The Japanese continually resorted to more desperate attacks and strategies as their forces were depleted. An increase of kamikaze and banzai attacks were seen.
So their attack on Pearl Harbor plan essentially failed?
Yup. Yo, Japan, said the US. Why are you here? Said Japan. To take over, said the US. No, Japan said. To take over. No. To take over. No. To take over. No. Okay, said the US. For now.
But now it is my time to finally shine. It's time for the Manhattan Project. Ah yes, Manhattan, filled with people sitting on beams thousands of feet in the air with Subway sandwiches, big flashing neon lights and sea trains filled with coffee-hungry, sleep-deprived business workers. The American dream.
I don't think that's how the American dream works.
Anyways, the Manhattan Project was a code name for the American-led effort to develop functional atomic weapons during the Second World War. It was mainly started because the US feared that German scientists had already been working on a weapon that used nuclear, fission and fusion, technology since 1930, and Hitler was preparing to use it. After 4 years of intensive and ever-mounting research and development efforts, the program's scientists worked on producing the key materials for nuclear fission, uranium-235 and plutonium-239. They sent them to New Mexico, where a team led by J. Robert Oppenheimer worked to turn these materials into a workable atomic bomb. Early on the morning of July 16, 1945, the Manhattan Project held its first successful test of an atomic device. At the Trinity test at Almagordon Ramsey, Alamogordo, New Mexico, which essentially generated an explosive power equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. And that's how the atomic bomb was born. Oh wow, Truman is in office now, and he thought that this weapon could be used to defeat Japan in a way less costly of US lives than a conventional invasion of Japanese homeland. The project was completed in August of 1945, but following the end of the war, the United States formed the Atomic Energy Commission to oversee research efforts designed to apply the technologies developed under the Manhattan Project to other fields. So what was this Operation Downfall? Does it relate to anything about waterfalls? Parachuting? Wait, kamikaze!
Going into the recording booth. For those who are actually concerned, Operation Downfall was the codename for the Allies' plan to invade and occupy the Japanese mainland whilst removing the threat that was the Imperial Japanese government. The first phase, also known as Operation Olympic, no, Zeus did not fight in the war, Dana, was where the Allies would secure the southern portion of Kyushu. Phase 2 was named Operation Coronet, involving a series of amphibious landings on the island of Honshu. From there, the ground forces would then travel to Tokyo and secure the epic victory.
Dang, sounds like a killer plan.
Yeah, it would be quite killer. But Operation Downfall never actually happened due to the breakthrough developments of the Manhattan Project. It would also result in a lot of American casualties. Just like it was a killer plan.
But then why did they go through all that planning if it never happened?
Okay, when they said the Manhattan Project was top secret, I mean like top secret. Even the top military generals were kept in the dark, which was why they kept planning on Operation Downfall.
Ah, okay. So what happened to Japan next?
The Potsdam Declaration.
The Potsdam Declaration was a document created on the 26th of July, 1945, in, well, Potsdam, Germany. You know, because Germany had given an unconditional surrender 2 months prior.
Wowie, did not know.
Not only that, but it was signed by the United States, the United Kingdom, and China, who called for the unconditional surrender from the Imperial Japanese government. However, they were met with a cold shrug from the Japanese emperor, who really didn't care for the declaration. Like, at all. But you know how this plays out.
By the time they were performing tests at the Trinity Test Center, the Triple Entente had already defeated Germany in Europe. Yet Japan still vowed to fight to the bitter end in the Pacific, despite clear indications that they had a very small chance of actually winning. Japanese soldiers were reported to have leapt out to sea because they would rather drown than give themselves up to the enemy.
Why was it hard? I know nationalism came out of the French Revolution, but most people didn't even like the king, or overall government, and went straight to chopping people's heads off with a blade on some rope and running into wars with pitchforks and probably stale loaves of bread.
Well, unlike the French Revolution, people were now willing to go fight and also die for their country's honor. The Japanese, they took that to another level. They take great pride in dying in the battle, knowing full well that they were fighting for their emperor, Michinomiya Hirohito. Even in late July, the Japanese militarist government rejected the Allied demands for surrender put forth in the Potsdam Declaration previously mentioned. They just will not surrender, not even if the pandemic hit them like it's hitting us. There's a percent of their washing hands with germs.
But they're willing to surrender to an atomic bomb?
Well, no, but actually yes. The initial bombing killed over 140,000 people, most of whom were civilians, and even more from radiation sickness and cancer. Yes, the Japanese were ruthless, but the line had to be drawn somewhere. They pulled the France and raised the white flag. On August 15, 1945, the Japanese government issued an official statement for their unconditional surrender, saying the US had finally employed a most cruel bomb. If the bombings didn't happen, then Operation Downfall would take place, resulting in even more casualties on both sides.
Now that we're done discussing why the bombing was done, let's recap what the bombing actually was about.
Wait, that's not the end of the bombing?
Don't be ridiculous, we still got about 40 more things to go.
But half of these points are just random scribbles.
Who did almost all of the work here?
I mean...
Who's the narrator here? Me or you?
Alright, I got you. Relax, bro. Take a chill pill or nap or something.
So, who was involved again?
Well, we never really talked about... Now that I think about it, we never really even talked about the actual bombing. Was all of this just filler?
Maybe... Okay, look, I thought it would be more logical to talk about why the bombing happened first, because it happens before...
Yeah, I got that.
I guess I just forgot about what this project was actually about.
So are you gonna actually talk about it now?
Yeah, I should do that.
Dana, you're telling me it was in the cabin all along when the fuck...
Pacific Showdown. Japan versus the United States. Fight. Finish him.
Well, why do we even need to remember this event anyways? Because, to be honest, isn't this another one of America's totally over-the-top ideas because they didn't feel like dealing with this problem rationally via democracy and politics or whatever it's called?
Well, yeah, but actually this bombing is pretty important in terms of historical events. I mean, we're learning about this in a Social 20-1 class.
Huh, I guess you're right. So why exactly was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki important?
Well, it was the first time in history a single munition had the capability to completely decimate a city or large landmass, which led to a death toll in the tens of hundreds of thousands indiscriminately. Most were killed instantly from the blast force and explosion of the weapons, while thousands more died as a result of collapsed infrastructure, burns, and radiation poisoning. It could then be considered a genocide because it included the mass killing of mostly innocent Japanese people. Yet, the US government still debates over that it had to be done or, well, more people would die.
However, aside from being a mass killing, were there other ways that the bombings have been remembered?
Yep. Right after the war, from 1945 to 1952, military occupations began in Japan by the Allied powers after its defeat in World War II. This was an international occupation and was almost entirely carried out by the US forces. During the period, Japanese soldiers and civilians from abroad were repatriated to Japan, armed industries were dismantled, and political prisoners were released. There was a new constitution vesting power in a democratic government which replaced the Meiji Constitution. Japan announced its right to wage war, and the emperor was reduced to a ceremonial status while women were given rights to vote. The occupation administration also carried out land reforms and began to break up the zaibatsu. The education system was also revised to resemble the US's. The Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park was created in a flattened area resulting from the nuclear blast and is a large memorial park in the heart of Hiroshima. It was built to remember all of the individuals lost and to serve as a reminder about the fragility of society and the importance of peace. The Nagasaki Peace Park was created in an area affected by the dropping of the atomic bomb on Nagasaki and is a memorial park that commemorates those who were lost while highlighting the destruction caused by the war and the importance of peace and stability. Some argue that the bombing can be classified under crimes against humanity. However, the public opinion on the usage of the weapons have dropped in the double-digit percentage points worldwide, as a result of individuals better understanding the after effects of nuclear weapons. This has resulted in two sides of the argument, ones who believe that the usage of such a weapon prevented further bloodshed, while others who believe it was completely unnecessary, believing that the Japanese were ready to surrender anyways.
The legacy of the bombings has set a huge stage of future conflicts and redefined international politics as the looming threat of atomic weapons being employed onto other targets on the planet was introduced. This cemented the US as a superpower and being the only nation at the time to possess such weapons. This was short-lived because, well... The bombings have also transformed Japan's destiny forever, reinventing them to fit American forms of governance with traditionalist Japanese culture. This eventually led to Japan developing one of the world's largest economies.
It was actually quite tough to find people who had a positive impact for this project, or well, this topic. But this is what we were able to conjure up from the interwebs. Firstly, President Harry Truman was the closest to having a positive impact from the usage of the weapons. He did not have to send hundreds of thousands of Americans and Allied servicemen to their graves in what could have possibly been the most costliest invasion of the war, allowing American firepower to be projected across the globe, stopping his Soviet friends in their tracks on European expansionism and other land claims.
Sadako Sasaki was only 2 years old when the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. She reportedly suffered no immediate injuries from the blast. However, when she was escaping the nuclear holocaust with her family, she was exposed to the radioactive black rain. 9 years later, Sadako developed leukemia linked with radiation. Based on the Japanese legend where you would get your wish granted if you folded 1,000 paper cranes, she went on and folded crane after crane in her hospital bed. Sadako folded over 1,000 paper cranes before she died at the age of 12. Ever since, the paper crane has become the symbol of healing for Japan, and eventually for the whole world as well. She let out the pain of both of our parents and her own suffering with each crane. She hid her suffering and was very tolerant of the pain. She didn't want anyone to worry. She didn't complain to her friends or to us. Her spirit encouraged others to speak for her bravely. This is what Masahiro Sasaki said about his sister, Sadako Sasaki. He founded the non-profit organization Sadako Legacy to keep his sister's message alive.